Hello, creative folks, and thank you so much for being here with me in this exciting new tutorial of Affinity Photo. In this tutorial, I'm going to explain you all about the blend modes. So without any further ado, let's jump into the tutorial. To demonstrate this tutorial, I'm using a fill layer where I'm going to change it from white to dark to show you the changes. This special photo that I have created particularly for this tutorial, where I have a few gradient layers and color circles. In Affinity Photo, you have a lot of blend modes. They're all in group. So first group are darken, multiply, color burn, linear burn, darker color. So all of those actually are in the same group. They darken the photo. What that means exactly, it doesn't make any sense. So I'm going to show you with example what they exactly do so that you can actually see as we talk. I have few photographs, one of myself and one landscape. So ideally, I want to show you what happens on landscape photograph and on portrait. So you can get an idea what can you do with all those blend modes. I also have a color box to show you exactly what happens in white to dark and every other colors. Right, so let's jump in. We're going to start with darken first. So I have this fill layer on, which is almost transparent. So I'm going to go back to normal first. So in normal, I have this gray fill layer. So fill layer generally, you can change from dark to black. It doesn't change much. It just basically fill up with the colors that I just showed. Now, what if I change the normal to darken? The white is disappeared. And when you move from white all the way to the dark, somewhere in between, it almost looks like it's overexposing all the highlight area without touching the dark area. I'm going to go all the way just before it completely turns black. Right now, what do you see? You see that all these dark spots remains untouched, although everything else becoming kind of black, but before it's turning into black, it's burning everything. That's what it does. Darken, but it's kind of like overexposed, then all of a sudden nothing. Now I'm going to show you with this example too. So if I do the same thing, darken, you can see all the white area transparent and it's turning all the way to the black, but somewhere in between it blown all the highlights, literally. So that's what it does, and the color remained transparent. So I'm going to turn this one off. I will show you what happens in terms of the portrait photography. White, transparent, and going slowly to the black, you can see all my highlights there. They're all gone, blown out. You lost all the details. And check out the shadow. Shadow still protected. So I'm gonna go slowly. You see even the darker part now getting affected until it's completely dark. So I'm going to repeat it. Darken, dark the image, but when it does so, it affects all the highlight area of the photograph. So that's what the darken does. Now I'm going to change the mode layer to multiply. So again, multiply. The white remained same, transparent. As we go to the dark, leaves the white alone. It makes it completely transparent. It just keeps the black. Globally make everything darker. It doesn't burn anything like it did with darken. In darken, we saw that it's touching the highlights, but the multiply doesn't do anything with exposure. It just globally make everything darker. And I'm going to show you the same thing on a landscape. I'm going to turn all the way to the dark. You see, it's like a sunset, kind of like a nice fade out in video. Same with this one. So I'm going to do the same thing with that. There you go. Although it does globally, so I don't see much of a use of multiply. Probably have a lot of use, but I personally don't use it at all. Now we established our definition. Darken the image. White remains transparent. As is moving to the dark, somewhere in between, it burns the highlight. Multiply doesn't change any exposure at the bottom layer. It just plain gets darkened. Now, what the color burn does, we're going to show you the example. Again, pay attention, white remain completely transparent. And as we move to the dark, check out what's happening. What do you see? I'm going to show you first. I'll let you think what's happening. I'm going to do it again and again. I will do exactly the same thing with a portrait. Maybe you can get a better idea. I'm going to explain. Hold on a second. I'm going to show you exactly what's happening. I'm going to slowly move to the dark. where you see the change is happening first. I think you can guess it already, but I'm going to show you. Now I'm going to change the slider again while I'm explaining it. As I'm moving to the dark, I'm gonna go this much. You see, it's making the contrast. It's touching the shadow first. It's not touching the highlight first. I'm gonna move. Just before, you can see the brightest part is the last part to be changed before it gets completely dark. Simple as that. Color burn is completely opposite of darken. Darken, when you change it to darken, where is it? There you go. When you move from white to dark, it's affecting the highlights first before it's moving to the darker part. Look at that. However, when you go to the color burn and then doing exactly the same, it's affecting the dark and shadow area first before it's moving to the highlight and gets completely dark. So our beginning result, transparent white, remains the same. Our end result, complete black, remains the same. It always happens during the process when it's moving towards from white to dark. So that's what color burn does. Linear burn, I'm going to change it again slowly and then go all the way to the dark. Personally, linear burn is the calmer version of color burn. So imagine they both do the same, but linear means not as aggressive and it affects the dark and highlight, but it doesn't do much with the saturation. What I mean, I'm going to go back to the color burn and do exactly the same, and as you can see, my skin getting more dark orange. But if I do exactly the same thing with the linear burn, it just gets dark, more darker, but it doesn't do much with my color at all. Only reason why you see it more orangey or because you have a dark fade on top of it, but it's nothing to do with the saturation, that's for sure. So we established that the linear burn is similar to color burn, but is less aggressive. I'm going to turn this on and show you exactly the same. Turn on beam. So you can see from white to dark, it's just nice and fade, but it's nothing aggressive at all. Right, now our final element of the dark mode is the darker color. What that does. Right. This is very interesting. When I say interesting, don't get scared. It's not complicated, because every time a photographer tries to explain something like, oh, this is interesting, means, oh, it is complicated, so it's gonna be cool because I know more than you. No, not at all. It's interesting because it's actually cool what this does. I'm going to show you with an example. My face is not important first. I'm going to turn this color checker on. And what I do, I'm going to make this one smaller. You must be wondering why I'm doing this. You're gonna see it eventually. I'm going to move it around. As I'm moving, before I move around, I'm going to tell you what it is. This is white all the way to the black, white to the black. That's gray. Gray gets transparent as well, as you can see. You have yellow, red, green, blue, and black and white. And some are transparent, some are not transparent. I'm going to move it around slowly. When I'm moving around, you will see that on some color it's been affected, on some color it's not being affected. So again, what that means, I'm going to go back, I'm going to turn this one off, turn the top one on, and change to color dark, and I'm going to do the same thing. Check what happens when I'm moving from white to black. Slowly, I'm going to do it as slow as I possibly can. It's affecting the dark white to dark first before it's hitting the color, almost all the color. The colors are like not smooth, it's like block after block. You see, again, what it is doing exactly, it's basically doing the same thing as darken. I'm going to show you the darken first. In darken, it's been doing the same thing, but it's quite nice and smooth, right? It's not trying to protect any color, it's just globally changing everything. Where darker color, when you're trying to do this, it's not smooth, it's trying to protect some color before it gets completely dark. So if you really want me to get to the point, okay, I'm getting to the point, I know you're getting impatient. Okay, it does the same thing as darken, but before it do so, it try to protect the RGB, which is a very good tool for protecting your color. If you have a landscape and you somehow happens to use this blend mode. So I'm going to go back to the darken color, and now I have this photograph on landscape. I'm going to show you on landscape. Imagine a landscape, you have green tree, blue sky, orange sun, and some other elements, and you want to use the darken color. What it does, tries to, I'm going to go stop at halfway. You see, it's trying to do the same thing as darken, but the blue stays untouched, the orange stays untouched almost, and the green stays untouched. Everything is kind of touching it, especially the highlights. Remember, in darken, it attacks the highlights first before it moves to the shadow area. In this case, is trying to do exactly the same thing, attacking all the highlights, but is also trying to protect all the colors before it do so. So it's an important tool when you're trying to modify something on a photograph while you're trying to protect especially the red, blue and green. So that's our last element of the dark modes. Going to show you for the last time this one. You see I'm going to go halfway. It's shadow and it's blue, so it's being protected. Shadow and my skin tone protected. Highlights doesn't exist anymore. Any kind of highlight doesn't exist anymore. So what are we now? So we covered darken, multiply, color burn, linear burn, darker color. So very briefly, darken from white, transparent, dark, become black. In between, it attacks the highlight first. Quickly, there you go. I'm gonna touch it and then go all the way there. So that's what it does. Multiply. I'm going to change it to multiply. White remains transparent, dark becomes dark, but in between it does a global fade, global dark. It doesn't affect anything to any color or exposure to the image below. Now, color burn. It does opposite of darken. It affects the shadow first before it's moving to the highlight. So white remains transparent, dark remains dark. In between, it affects the shadow first, try to protect the highlights. Linear burn, similar to the color burn, but it's more linear and less aggressive. It doesn't do anything much of the highlights or shadow. It does a global fade out. Darken color, same as the darken, while it's trying to protect all the colors first. Again, it does the same as darken while trying to protect the color, especially the blue, green and orange first. So this is our first part of explaining the blend mode in Affinity Photo. In this tutorial, I have covered darken, multiply, color burn, linear burn and darker color. Play with it and then try to revisit this video over and over again until we move to the bright part and explain lighten, screen, color dodge, add and lighten color. So I'll see you in the next video. Have a wonderful day. Bye bye.